Welcome everybody to today's video. I thought that we would talk about feeding patterns and feeding pattern changes. I think it's important to know because throughout the time that you plan on breastfeeding, the baby's patterns of eating is going to change. And when that happens, you need to be able to know, is it normal? Is this not normal? Is there something that I should be doing different? And if it's not normal, you'll have signs that it's not normal. But if it's, I'm going to give you some tips to kind of like help you know when it is not normal. And then of course we're going to talk about the normal feeding patterns. But when something is abnormal, they could have this type of, it could be the same and yet a little bit different. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the feeding patterns, the changes, that kind of thing. And I actually put notes that I'm going to refer to on my computer. So I'm going to pull it up right now. And we're going to start with cluster feeding. So in the beginning, your baby is going to feed a lot. Probably they're going to set kind of their own pattern. At first there'll be no specific, they'll just be feeding whenever they're awake. If a baby is exceptionally sleepy, they tend to nurse a little bit differently. So every situation is a little bit different. So in the beginning they tend to feed a certain way and then it changes. Cluster feeding, when it's called cluster feeding, okay, how do I put this? When it's an actual pattern change, would mean that it would be something that is lasting for longer than just a day or two. Like it's something that's going on for maybe a month or more. So cluster feeding tends to happen if it's a pattern change. It will last for a little while. I know for me it started about 3 months where it was consistent. So for us, it was evening from about 6 o'clock in the evening on, and it was like every hour. Literally, I just felt like she was never off. We were just nursing constantly. And then she would sleep from whatever time I would put her down. Sometimes it would be 9:30, sometimes it might be closer to 11. And she would sleep all night from 11 till 7 in the morning. But the tip that I want to give you, to always know whether or not everything is okay, is just to remember that a baby should feed at least 8 times in 24 hours. So as long as your baby is feeding at least 8 times, you don't have to worry about their pattern so much because it's gonna constantly change. But then just counting the feeds when it does change will help you feel a little less worried. You'll know they're getting enough because they're getting at least the 8 feeds. If it's more than that, that's great, that's fine. But just knowing that they're getting at least that 8 feeds. As they get much older, that will change. It may not be 8 feeds, it might be 6. It just depends on what they're getting, how much they're getting out of your breast at a time, and that kind of thing. So cluster feeding is very normal. And like I said, it'll be a specific time period of the day where they will feed either every hour or just constantly, and then they'll sleep for a long period of time. The next thing is growth spurts, and usually with growth spurts they do a lot of cluster feeding, or they might be feeding excuse me, they might be feeding all day just constantly. As long as it only lasts for about 24 hours, maybe 24 hours, a little more than that, it's typically just a growth spurt. If it changed, like it's lasting longer, then I would say it's more like cluster feeding, as long as it's not, they're feeding every hour on the hour for 24 hours. If that was the case, and there definitely would be something going on because that wouldn't be normal. So growth spurts happen. They start usually between 10 and 14 days old, and they will happen every 2 weeks. And usually you get pretty big ones at 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, again 12 weeks, and then again at 6 months. But somewhere between, I would say, 3 months and 3 and 4 month mark, a lot of changes happen. A lot of times they're teething, they're growing, because if you think about it, in a few months, they're going to be eating solids. They're doing a lot of growing in that 3rd to 4th month. And I notice a lot of trouble can begin around that time frame. Like breastfeeding can be going really well, and then all of a sudden you start having some issues. Maybe they start to cluster feed a lot. Maybe they start, going through growth spurts more often than they were. Whatever the case, it is normal. The best thing, again, is feeds, counting them in 24 hours, and then also diapers. That's really your best clue of how much they're getting. If they go through at least 6 wet diapers a day, 2 or 3 can be of stool. It can be more than that, but at least 2 to 3. That is your clue that they're getting enough. But growth spurts will just usually last a day or two, and they go away. But they're extremely fussy. They seem unhappy with the breast. They seem angry with the breast. That's all normal. That's considered a growth spurt. And like I said, those happen pretty often up until about 6 months, and then they taper. You really won't see anything after 6 months because they begin to eat solid foods, and eventually from 6 months on, breastfeeding will slowly become more of the supplement and less of the majority of their nutrition. So growth spurts are normal. I'm going to put information in the description box, as I always do, that will talk about each of these things, just so you have, if there's something specific, maybe you want to know more about cluster feeding or more about growth spurts, you can go and read on those. I also have separate videos that talk about some of these things, so you can go check those out as well. In fact, I do encourage you to go check out my older videos to see if there's anything in particular that you have a question about that I have discussed in greater detail. So definitely check out my older videos. The next thing I want to talk about is the length of feeds. So a lot of times a baby will start off feeding anywhere. It can take anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Anything longer than 30 minutes, then there's either they're sleeping or they're not breastfeeding well, they're having some problems. So anything more than 30 minutes, you might want to see if they're falling asleep, you might want to wake them and try to get them to stay awake to make sure they feed. Because a lot of times a baby that's taking way longer is falling asleep, and then you have to wake them up, and then they start feeding again. And it's just usually there's something like that going on. So normal is between 15 to 30 minutes. And that's, I want to say, for the first, let's just say the first 6 weeks. And then around 6 weeks, it can be a little less than that or a little more than that. They can begin to empty breasts much quicker. So when they're really good at feeding and they're really good at breastfeeding, maybe they either caught on really quick or they're older, they can empty that breast anywhere from 5 to 7 or 10 minutes. So they can feed much quicker. I'm going to say between 5 and 10 minutes, they can empty a breast. And this would be a child that is better at breastfeeding and who's got it down and they're strong and they're doing well. They can empty a breast quickly. So this is normal for a baby that is a little bit older. For the first 2 to 4 weeks, I feel like they're still learning a lot, and so it can take them a little longer. But there are babies who right away can just do great. So if your baby is one that is going through the diapers, they're growing, they're gaining weight, and they're emptying the breast in, say, 5 to 7 minutes, then that it shouldn't be a worry. But if they're not going through enough diapers and they're not gaining weight properly, and that's how long that they're feeding, then there might be an issue again that you would want to check on. So length of feeds will change. In the beginning, they're a little longer, and as they get more proficient, they can empty them quicker. So you don't want to worry if that changes. Everything that I'm talking about, the reason I want to talk about it is because when it changes, when the baby has set a pattern and then it changes, you begin to worry that maybe something is wrong. And so this is kind of a way to let you know that it's normal and what to expect and what to do, and most importantly, what to do to make sure that everything is okay. So like if your baby starts to cluster feed and you're worrying that you don't have enough milk, you could check diaper output. Now, so say they've been feeding every 3 hours and all of a sudden they start feeding every hour in the evening, let's just say, and you have no milk. You can tell your breasts are empty. And within 24 hours, your body will adjust. And once it realizes this is a pattern, it will begin to have milk ready for the baby every hour. Literally, it will make sure there's enough. Your breasts are never empty. It's just when the baby has set when they've made their order, so specifically every 3 hours, the baby feeds 3 ounces from your breasts, whether, 1.5 ounces on one, 2 ounces on another, whatever the case, then the body has that ready every 3 hours. In between, it's just making it, but there is milk there. So when the baby is breastfeeding, they're getting milk. It's just not as fast flow, and it's not the reserve. It's giving it to it as it's making it, so it's much slower. So you don't have to worry that they're starving. And if you let them breastfeed, don't give them a bottle or anything, let them breastfeed even when the breasts are empty. That's going to tell the body we need to make more and we need to make it more often and so forth. So at first, that first day or so will maybe a struggle, but your breast will get better. If you feel that your milk is not increasing and the baby starts to lose weight or the diaper output is not as good, then you would want to supplement, of course, or talk with somebody, have a lactation consultant or a breastfeeding peer counselor or a CLC observe you and the baby breastfeeding to see if everything is okay. They can do weight checks. They can do different things to make sure that everything is going well, and then they can have you supplementing in a way that will not sabotage your breastfeeding and kind of help you build supply so that and not lose it, kind of thing. So definitely get help if you do feel that you do not have enough milk. It's not getting more. The baby still seems extra fussy. There are hours of a day where a baby is fussy, and they call it the witching hour. It's just certain times of the day, and a baby will just cry constantly for no reason whatsoever. So that is normal. But if you feel that the baby is not getting enough milk and you're seeing it in other ways like diaper output and the baby isn't gaining weight and that kind of thing, then you would definitely want to check. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is day and night feeds. So a lot of times a baby, their day and night feeds will be different. So maybe at night they're feeding more frequently, and then during the day less frequently, and then that will flip. So then they might be feeding more frequently during the day and then less frequently at night, and then it flips again. I just want you to be aware that it is normal for their night feeds and day feeds to be different. So if you notice that they're feeding more often during the day and then they're sleeping more at night, that's okay. That's normal, as long, again, all you're looking for is diaper output and at least 8 feeds in 24 hours. So that's the things that you're looking for. Now, if you're looking for whether they're getting enough from even the feeds that they're doing, then you're looking for diaper output and weight gain. So those are things that you can expect. You can expect cluster feeding, growth spurts, the length of feeds to vary, and the day and night feeds to change and vary. Really, for the first year of your baby's life, feeding patterns are going to change constantly. So I just wanted to make this video to help you be aware of that and to know what to expect and then what to look for to make sure that everything is okay. I hope that that's clear. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you have any other feeding patterns that you experienced that you would like to share with everybody, please put that in the comments below. Be sure to check the description box. I will have some links there for you for further information on these things. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It should be somewhere on the screen as well as below the video. And then there's a little notification bell. If you click on that, that will notify you when I put out videos. So you guys, thank you for watching. I hope that the video helps you, answers any questions that you have, and I will see you guys in my next video.